Before France trembled beneath revolutions, before kings lost their heads, one king almost lost his throne to something far more humiliating, his own body. This is not a story of war. This is not a story of assassins. This is the disgusting, hidden, and horrifying truth of how Louis XIV, the most powerful man in Europe, nearly died from a rotten wound no one was meant to see. And it began in silence. When Louis XIV ascended the throne of France, people believed they were witnessing something close to divine. He called himself the Sun King, and the world accepted it. Versailles was built as his radiant stage: gold, silk, mirrors, absolute control. Every movement of his day was ritual. Every breath felt like ceremony. But behind the perfumes of the palace and the glitter of power, something far darker was beginning to grow. By the mid-1680s, those closest to the king started noticing small, unsettling changes. Louis began hesitating between steps. He shifted his weight strangely while standing. When he sat, it was with a slight stiffness. These were tiny details, but in a palace where everything was observed, they were impossible to ignore. At first he dismissed it. The royal court blamed long horse rides, heavy garments, endless ceremonies. A king, after all, could not be ill. Louis himself believed weakness was for ordinary men. But flesh does not care for crowns. Soon the discomfort sharpened. A burning pain followed him whenever he sat, rode, or even stood too long. He forced a smile through it. He continued attending court. He endured ceremonies that lasted for hours while a silent agony gnawed at him from within. His servants saw more than he admitted. The king shifted constantly on his throne, rising too quickly, clutching armrests just a little too hard. Then came something much harder to hide. Stains. At first, they were small, faint reddish marks against royal velvet. Servants wiped them away in secret. Cushions were changed. Fabrics were replaced. Perfume was poured like rain across the throne room, but something worse followed. A smell, soft at first, then unmistakable. A sour, metallic stench that clung to the air like a ghost. No amount of lavender or amber could defeat it. Courtiers began perfecting a new art, the art of pretending not to notice. They turned their heads when the king stood. They held handkerchiefs near their faces, pretending to swoon from heat while secretly escaping the growing rot beneath their monarch. By spring of 1685, the situation had become impossible to ignore. Louis could no longer sit through meetings. He paced instead, gripping tables, forcing his body to obey commands even as it betrayed him. His smile had tightened, become mechanical, his temper shortened. Pain was now shaping the fate of France. At night, muffled sounds leaked from behind his chamber doors. Not royal commands, but groans. Suppressed cries, the kind no king should ever make. The wound had deepened, infected, festering, a hidden tunnel of decay inside his own flesh. Rumors spread through Versailles like mold. Some whispered it was a curse, divine punishment for his pride. Others claimed witchcraft. A few daring souls suggested the truth. Years of rigid posture, endless riding, and the pressure of holding a kingdom upright had finally torn something inside him. By late 1685, the reality could no longer be denied. Louis needed cushions, then special cushions, then multiple embroidered pillows stacked in secrecy like royal contraband, carried by servants wherever he walked. Blood followed him. So did the smell? The Palace of the Sun King had become the Palace of Rot. Windows were thrown open every morning to chase the stench. Herbs were crushed into the floors. Vinegar was burned in bowls. Versailles fought an invisible enemy, but the enemy lived inside its king, and worse than the infection. The man was changing. Pain made him dangerous. He accused his doctors of betrayal. One moment he demanded they save him or die. The next he begged them in whispers, convinced something alive was moving inside him. The wound at last received its name. A rectal fistula, a hidden internal tunnel eating into living tissue, refusing to heal. The treatments were cruel, primitive, and useless. Hot compresses, herbal poultices, oil infusions. Baths steeped in wine, prayers murmured over raw flesh. Some burned him. Some made the infection rage harder. None cured him. Desperate, the king abandoned reason. Versailles became a magnet for healers, mystics, and wandering miracle men. Anyone who claimed a solution was brought before the throne. Monks, peasants, surgeons, alchemists, each one permitted to touch what no citizen had ever been allowed near, the broken body of the king. Silver was thrown at hope. Titles were promised to strangers. Louis let unknown hands press burning mixtures to his wound. He suffered every experiment with clenched teeth as though pain might earn redemption, but the rot only deepened. His court watched their god-king reduced to a trembling, sweating man trapped in a failing body. Ministers avoided his eyes. Diplomats returned home fearing the French throne would soon stand empty. There was only one option left: surgery, and in the 17th century, surgery was not healing. It was survival through torture, no anesthetic. No guarantee, only steel and resolve. The man chosen for the task was Charles Francois, the king's surgical valet. He wasn't a noble, wasn't a famous physician, he was a man with steady hands and nothing to lose. If he failed, he would die. So Felix spent months preparing in secret, practicing on prisoners, memorizing the terrible pathways of this disease. New blades were forged just for the king, curved scalpels shaped to follow the hidden tunnel inside royal flesh. When the day arrived, the palace fell into terrified silence. Louis XIV, the Sun King, lay not on a throne, but on cold linen. Candles burned, tools gleamed, men prayed. There would be no dignity. Only pain. As they turned him onto his side, the world's most powerful man gripped the sheets like a child and whispered prayers no one dared repeat. And when the blade finally touched his flesh, his scream echoed through Versailles. The scream of a god becoming human. The sound that escaped the king's lips was not the voice of a ruler, not the command of a monarch, not the measured tone that had controlled France for decades. It was raw, animal, a sound torn from the deepest part of human fear. The chamber froze as if time itself had bowed to the moment. Charles Francois Felix did not stop. He could not. The steel pressed deeper, guided by memory, by practice, by desperation. Blood welled instantly, dark and overwhelming, soaking the linens beneath the Sun King's body. Hands moved quickly to contain it, but there was no hiding what was happening. The most powerful body in Europe had been opened like any other. The foul stench of rot escaped into the air, stronger than ever before, filling the chamber with a truth that perfumes and power could no longer disguise. The infection had carved its ugly path inside him, a hidden corridor of decay that Felix now followed inch by agonizing inch, his hands slick, his breath shallow, his life balanced on the thin edge of the blade. The locked doors, the palace held its breath. Courtiers stood frozen in corridors. Servants whispered prayers through shaking lips. Somewhere in the distance, a clock continued to tick, utterly indifferent to the suffering of a king. Minutes stretched into eternities. Louis bit down on folded cloth, his body trembling against the hands holding him in place, his fingers digging so hard into the mattress that blood from his palms stained the sheets alongside the greater, darker pool forming beneath him. He did not beg, he did not curse, he endured. Somewhere between agony and pride, the legend of the Sun King clung to its last light. Felix worked slowly, methodically, tracing the hidden tunnel with unholy precision until at last, he reached the end of its cruel path. The fistula, the rotten channel that had nearly ended a reign, lay severed. The blade withdrew, trembling slightly now for the first time, as if only now did it understand what it had done. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. Everyone waited. Was he breathing? Was he still king? Or had this rotten wound finally claimed the throne? Then, a small movement. A shallow inhale, another, life still stubborn, still present, still clinging to flesh even after unimaginable pain. Relief washed over the men in the room like a breaking wave. Some crossed themselves. Some turned away, unable to face the blood. Felix staggered back, not in victory but in disbelief. He had cut into divinity and somehow walked away alive. But the battle was far from over. In the 17th century, the blade was only the beginning. Infection still lingered, lurking like a patient killer. The wound had to close, it had to mend. If it failed, gangrene would creep in, and this moment of survival would become a delayed execution. The king was cleaned as best as trembling hands could manage, bandages thickly wrapped around him. Mixtures of herbs and wine were applied in desperate hope of purity. The windows were flung open to push away death itself. Word began to travel through Versailles in whispers, then in stunned murmurs, then in waves of disbelief. The king had survived. The Sun King had been cut like a common man, and lived. But survival came at a cost. For days, Louis lay motionless, feverish, trapped between dreams and delirium soaked in pain. At times he mumbled the names of long-dead figures. At times he ordered armies that no longer existed. His body fought a war within, white and red clashing beneath royal skin. Courtiers who had once feared him now feared for him. A strange quiet settled over the palace, as if everyone understood that the future of France now depended on the slow knitting of torn flesh. Then something incredible began to happen. The fever broke, the wound began to close. The smell of rot faded, the body of the king, once betrayer, began to forgive itself. And as strength slowly returned to him, a new legend was born, not of power, but of endurance. The same men who had once whispered behind perfumed handkerchiefs now spoke of him in awe. They called it a miracle. They called it divine favor, they called him chosen. But Louis knew better. He had faced something no crown could command. He had felt the truth beneath the gold and the silks, that even a king is only flesh stitched together by will. And instead of humbling him, the experience sharpened him like a blade dipped in fire. When he finally returned to the throne room, walking slowly but upright, the court gasped as one body. The Sun King had risen again, not from ashes, but from his own decay. He sat, carefully, deliberately, on cushions specially crafted for his new reality. And yet his face was steady, his eyes clear, his presence reborn in an entirely new form of dominance. From that moment forward, France did not see a man who had nearly died from a hidden wound. They saw a king who had defeated death itself. The surgery became legend. Felix was rewarded beyond imagination, showered with wealth, titles, land. A fountain of honor for the hand that saved the throne. But no reward could buy the memory of that scream, of that open flesh, of the moment where a god had bled. Across Europe, whispers spread. If the French king could survive such horror, then perhaps he truly was chosen by God. His enemies trembled, his allies bowed deeper. His myth grew larger than it had ever been before. Wars, treaties, palaces, paintings, all now carried an invisible undertone. This is the man who lived through the impossible. And yet, hidden from history books and royal portraits, a darker truth survived. Quiet, festering, just beneath the polished narrative. Because even though the wound closed, it never truly left him. Scars twisted beneath the silk. Pain returned in ghostly echoes. Certain movements remained forever forbidden. Certain nights still found the king awake, staring into darkness, remembering the smell of himself, the sound of his own humanity breaking the silence. The empire rose, the sun shone on. But somewhere, deep in the bowels of Versailles, in the bones of its walls, lingered a secret that history buried under gold. The greatest king in Europe had once been defeated by his own body. And that body had screamed.